Hello, everybody, and welcome to Music Industry Insights Worldwide. Today, we've got the awesome Andy Corrigan with us. Hi, Andy, how are you?
Hello, Saskia. I'm pretty good, thank you.
Thank
Hope
you.
you're too.
Thank you so much. And thank you for coming along today to share your story with us and also to talk about Visa La Visa. Do you want to tell the listeners a little bit more about yourself, where you're from, and what you do?
Okay. Well, my name's Andy Corrigan. I'm from Lancashire, just outside Liverpool, a long time ago, and I run a company called Viva La Visa, and we do what it says on the tin. We help mostly musicians and a few related industries with visas for travel from the UK to other places, and from other places to the UK, and from other places to other places. Predominantly, we do people going to America, but we do lots of others. And I started the company when I don't know how many years ago now, not that long ago, about 14 years ago, 14 years, something like that, when I was at home looking after my twins while my partner went to work. And I kind of used to go on the road and be a touring person. And one of a band I did work for, a band called Steel Pulse, old British reggae band, still going after all these years, still fighting the good fight up there. And they had problems because they got Jamaican people in the band and had problems getting into Canada. And I sorted that out somehow. And it went from there. And it was me just me on my own for a little while. And then, yeah, grew from there.
You've been in the music industry for many years, Andy. How did you start off, and how did you've talked about how you started the visa company, but you didn't start off doing visas, did you?
No, I started off I was like I was a young person from Lancashire in the middle of nowhere, just outside Liverpool, and loved music, obviously, and didn't love school or anything else, and wanted to rebel about whatever you'd got. And all I wanted to be was an art student forever and ever. Still, all I want to be, really. And I went to, and I love music. I have no musical talent whatsoever, absolutely minus zero. But I didn't have it. I didn't have music lessons when I was a kid. I went to art school in Liverpool, do a foundation course, and did that. And then I went to Leeds to do fine art at Leeds. And I met a bunch of other people, like-minded people, as you do. That's where you go to college for, isn't it? And not to do any work, but to kind of meet people that with like-minded people that you're going to be mates with. And it was a sort of time of punk, or just before punk. And I remember a feeling of looking around and thinking music was a bit rubbish. And there's a general thing, you couldn't put your finger on it, but it was a bit crap, and things like, oh, you go and see really, boring old bands, and there was no connection. And then punk came along, and slightly before punk, there was pub rock and Dr. Feelgood in particular, a great band, because they played very stripped down R&B. And so we used to do in our part of our art, we did. Please tell me if I'm chuntering on too long and it's boring. And so we used to do. I used to paint it. We used to do performance art. So I'm messing about what you can get away with, really. So we did a little gang of us. We did performance art, and then there was a friend who was a year below who came up because a few of my mates were from a particular school in Kent, from Sevenoaks School, and he could play the guitar, and he was always going to form a band. And so he thought, he came on. He had a guitar and an amplifier, because in those days, one of the other things in those days, there was no music equipment. Music equipment was very, very expensive. So if you had a drum kit, you were in a band. Even if you couldn't count to four, you'd still be in a band. But you got a drum. Oh, it's got a drum. They've got a drum kit. Or if you had electric guitars, are really hard to come by. There weren't. Nowadays, they're inexpensive and pretty good. But those, it was really hard. Equipment was very, very hard. So anyway, my friend Andy Gill sadly passed away 4 years ago. He was going to form a band, and I was always going to be the sound person. I was going to be the person that mixed the sound, because I knew a bit about that. So I had an interest in electronics and hi-fi and stuff. And he was with another friend from his school, and they'd written a few songs, and liked Dr. Feelgood. And it was slightly before, sort of punk was happening, but I was the only one, I think the only one that had seen any of the punk bands, because I'd been in London in 76, in the summer of 76, with another friend, and had seen a lot of the punk bands when I was working there, and kind of brought the gospel back, because you read about them, you read about punk, you read about the Sex Pistols before you heard them. So you in your mind, you have an idea of what they might sound like, and then you get, so yeah, we're making up all this stuff about bands that you'd never actually heard how marvelous they would be. And in some cases they disappoint, mostly they do. And in some cases they don't, like the Pistols, and people didn't. So anyway, so this band was formed, and it was me, I thought of the name for them. They called Gang of Four, and still sort of going in a way. And so that formed, and while they used to rehearse in a bit of derelict bit of the university students' union, and while they were our little group, while they were sort of peripheral to them friends, I was their sound guy, said, oh, we should be a band then, and we picked up their instruments while they were down the pub, and okay, it's like, you can be, you be the drummer and you be the singer and and that didn't work, so we swapped around a bit, and it ended up with me being the singer and other people being guitarists, and then we sat out, and then we thought what we should be called, and we thought, oh, okay. And again, I think it was me that thought of the name. I thought we should be called the Mekons. We should be called Dan Dare and the Mekons, because from the younger listeners won't know, or even middle-aged listeners won't know, that was from a comic, a 1950s, 60s boys comic called The Eagle. And Dan Dare was do you know him, Sasson? Do you know that? No, maybe you don't. Anyway, it was really big. It was a really popular comic, and Dan Dare was the lead story in it, and he was a spaceman, and he was a very, very morally good spaceman. Obviously, he was a kind of a British spaceman, and he was Dan Dare, pilot of the future, and he used to go off around the galaxy, kind of doing good and wasting baddies. And his main rival was the Mekon, which was this green kind of space creature that hovered around a little flying saucer, and he was the epitome of evil. So I thought that was, and the connection was that my mum knew the guy that had written it, the first writer of it, because she'd nursed him in hospital. My mum was a nurse back in Lancashire, and that's how the connection was. And I used to get the comic when I was a kid, because a friend of mine my friend of my mum and dad's was a publisher there, and it was beautifully, if you ever see it, you look online, it was beautifully drawn and very kind of, it was color and on good paper, and it was really, really popular. And so that's why we were called Dan Dare and the Mekons. We sat outside the pub, and then we wrote some songs, and then we went and played them and tried to learn how to play. But no one could play. So that's how I got into the business. And I never dreamt of being, I'm not a musician, I never dreamt of being in a band. And the Mekons had a certain amount of success. We made records, and people came to see us, and still do, and we still do a bit. So that's how it was. And then I was always like I was like sound mixing and all that side of stuff. So I ended up doing, because I did sound for sound for the Mekons, and then played and sound for Gang of Four and we bands in Leeds, and we built a sound system, and the sound system which ended up giving to the rock against, because we did a lot for Rock Against Racism up there in Leeds and other places. We were big, obviously it was a very good thing to do. And then I went off and did sound and tour managing for quite a lot of bands in the 80s, 90s, for quite big bands, in fact, like the Human League and people when they were big, and did that, and that's how I got in. And I'd done it on and off all the way through, done that tour managing, production managing, sound engineering, working with bands, working not so much on studios, but a bit of studios. And then when the Mekons got back together again a few years ago, obviously we did that again. And then the visa, when I'd been a tour person, I used to have to do visas for my clients. I can remember being in San Francisco, and when all the band and crew were on a day off going sailing, and I was queuing up at a Japanese consulate getting Japanese visas, and thinking, okay, this is not that glamorous really, but and so I had a bit of knowledge, but visas was a peripheral thing, and it was kind of, and it still is, it's last on everybody's list of stuff to do on tours, because it's not the sexiest thing, frankly.
No, it's not, but it's super important, isn't it? And I think that's
well, he would say it is important, yes, and yes, and so Viva La Visa grew from that. I also have another sideline which I run with my son. We have a production company called Reproduction, and we do sound, lights, and staging and stuff like that for a lot of dance events and festivals and stuff like that. So that's it.
So what kind of the biggest challenges that musicians face at the moment? Obviously, we've left the EU and there's all these changes happening. So what are some of the challenges that musicians actually face now when trying to get a visa?
When trying to get a visa, I think that the main challenge is, well, the main challenge is, I suppose, is that what's happened when visa, like all immigration law and law changes and processes change. And what's happened certainly over the last 10 years is that nearly every country in the world has farmed out its immigration and visa processing to an agency, to third party agencies. Yeah. And it used to be, sound, well, in the good old days, it used to be certainly with like UK immigration, when we were bringing in people from Africa, say, you could phone up the local consulate in wherever they were doing it, in Nairobi or wherever, and say, hey, can you let this person in? I know they've had a bit of trouble in the past, maybe overstayed or something. But they said they're coming in to do this, and they do it. And now it's the process is to an agency, and the agencies are not empowered. They don't make any decisions, but they just do the processing. So that's a problem. And it's the same with nearly every country. The US doesn't do it quite so much, but that's a challenge. So anything that's out of the ordinary, or you want the authorities to do, because the music industry is always last minute. I'm sure other industries are. Everything's last minute. Everything's a panic, and it's left to the last minute. The main, when people ask me what's the main problem that people have, not the main difficulty in getting a visa, the main mistake that people make, it's just not allowing enough time. Right. Not time for processes. And certainly with the US, which is still the biggest market in the world, their processing has taken, they increased their prices by a big chunk back in April this year. And it's the first time I've seen price increases really affect people touring. And we're now seeing, particularly, for big bands, they don't care. It costs another whatever it costs, so many $1,000 off their bottom line. It's nothing, because portion of big touring visas are tiny, but for a small band on a shoestring or a solo artist going out for the first time, it's enough to put them off. Right. It's probably the price increases. If you've got a band and crew or more, it's put another £5,000 on an application. Although it shouldn't do, because combined with the price increases, the service has gone down. So a service that should take 2 months now can take 6 months, unless you pay the extra 5,000 quid to get it done in 3 weeks. So everyone is in that position of, we got to pay the extra money, otherwise we can't go. And they're over a barrel. And we're seeing people, saying, no, can't, I'm not going to do it. We've had even quite big bands. We had a couple, I won't name them, an old punk band a couple of months ago going over to do a festival, it's the Stranglers, great, fantastic. And they were going over to do a festival on the West Coast, and they were getting jolly good fees for it. But by the time they had to get visas just for that. By the time they'd added up the costs of their visas and the flights, it was hardly worth them going. And they were debating, it's just not worth us doing it. And for them, they should be able to and they should have been able to just go and do, and just go and do it, and it shouldn't have been a question. And so that's what's happening. So God, I've forgotten the question now. What was it? The biggest challenges? So the challenges, the movement away from embassies, countries doing their own processing, decreases in service have gone down, and a lot of it is down to still quite a few countries have been using the excuse or the reason that it's hangover from COVID, from the pandemic, when services were greatly restricted and just still catching up. So that's the main thing, not being able to circumvent the system. And certainly with the main other countries, not too bad, but the UK and US certainly declined in service. We see quite a lot of people coming into the UK getting declined for silly reasons. Yeah.
And this is another important part, especially for up and coming artists, as well as there's not much money in recorded music anymore. So if you're not getting out there and you're not touring, you're not doing the live, it's very hard to make that income, isn't it?
It's extremely hard. I mean, it's a challenge to be. I think musicians will always do it, and with the spirit, because you want to play, don't you? Casting my own mind back to, starting off in a band, and once we'd got the bit between our teeth, decided we wanted to be a band, we were like, we'll go and play. We did gigs. I can remember doing a gig in in Harrogate in Yorkshire, which is a posh spa town in Harrogate, and playing the gig, and there was the only person in the audience was the cleaning lady, leaning on her broom with a fag in her hand, saying, "Are you lads going to be long? Because I want to lock up." And we're playing away, bashing away, because you just do it, don't you? Because well, that was like every night, most nights we had a good crowd, but I think in that spirit, you would go and do it, and you wouldn't care about the consequences. I'm sure a lot of young bands will go to America in particular, and without work visas, and they shouldn't do it. And if they get caught, it'll be a problem down the line. But I can completely understand why you do it, because you want to play. You're 20 years old, and you're there with your mates, and because it's being in a band and playing music is the greatest thing in the world. I think it's the most fun. It's the absolute most fun you can have, and nothing's gonna stop you. But I mean, on the other hand, there are people that are put off by it. But I think that, but the whole thing of touring, I think for the bands at the lower end of the scale, the baby bands, the fees they're getting are probably the same as they were 20 years ago.
Right.
And the costs rocketed. If you look at the ticket prices, but for a lot of small shows, they're still low because that's the demand. And there's not much. If you do the sums on a 200 capacity venue with a £15 ticket, taking off the VAT and the cost, there's not much left to go round. Five or six people and a van to drive in and sleeping on someone's floor and some dinner. It doesn't leave a lot left. And I think at the upper scale, all they've done is the costs are enormous. I was looking at some costs for touring in the US the other day. The costs are enormous. Trucking, equipment hire, because equipment has got so expensive. And sophisticated. Crew wages, hotels, freight. The costs are enormous, but all that happens is it just goes on the ticket price. No one balks at, big concert tickets are really expensive. I remember seeing on the telly about 10 years ago an interview with Metallica's managers, and then say, well, we looked at budgets and thought, well, we're not getting enough money, and they said, we'll just push the prices up. And they said, we pushed the prices up and then pushed them up again. And they said, no one pushed back. No one said anything. So we thought, fine. And I think maybe people are starting to do so now, with the Oasis dynamic pricing thing. I think that's good, and I think the prices, because it's the artists that set the ticket prices, but maybe there's a compromise. I think there's a huge dichotomy though between the big bands that charge big ticket prices and then probably don't make that much money, but make a lot of money because the costs are so enormous, and the entry level bands who are still scraping by, and it's hard. I think it's hard, and what bands are having to do. We're seeing it, when the Mekons go and play now, which we never used to do before. We'll have, we'll be signing T-shirts and signing, we'll be doing merch. We never used to bother with that. We'd just be after the gig, we'd just be in the pub. We wouldn't. And you have to do all of that stuff, and really, and that it's selling a few T-shirts and CDs and vinyls makes the difference between having some dinner and not. And bands are having to be that much more business savvy, on that, which is good. Maybe we should have been before. And even we're seeing, with Viva La Visa's clients, even quite small acts are doing, they're doing VIP packages. You can, meet the band. With the Mekons, you probably pay money not to meet the band, but doing that kind of thing, because you have to try and do what you can. But it's tough. And yet, with no record sales, in the old days, of course, you toured to promote your record, and no one really cared. There were probably some acts that went out, sort of country and western acts probably, and things went out and made money out of touring. But certainly in rock music, it was just like, well, that's just, we've lost money. Well, it doesn't matter because we'll sell 1 million CDs or whatever, Anyway, yeah.
I was going to say to you, you've worked with some of the top names in the game from the UK and around the world, Andy. Can you share a memorable or complex case that you've really had to deal with to get people across the borders?
Oh God. Well, I had. I'm trying to think of a few ones. Getting people across borders. We do again. It would have been. Well, again, I suppose with Steel Pulse, I can remember we had. they were doing. I didn't go on all their tours. I went on some of their shows, not all of them, but we did all their visas. And because they played in a lot of obscure places, because reggae is it's very international. Their particular type of reggae is very international, has a big international appeal. And they were coming from somewhere to go to Portugal, and that they hadn't got. They were in they were in the US going to Portugal. They hadn't actually got visas. The visas hadn't come through, and it was between me and the promoter and the airline and the Portuguese government. We got them to agree to let them on the airplane first, because they wouldn't, special dispensation, and then when they arrived there, an official from the government was there to just wave them through with no visas and with nothing. So that was. That was I'm trying to think of one. Another time I was on tour in Canada, and going from Canada back into the US. This was before Viva La Visa, and then back home. And just before Christmas, it was December the 23rd, and two of the band lost their passports in Canada, and I had to get them. I managed to persuade them to get them through into America without passports, which they did.
Wow.
And then back without, again, I didn't even get them emergency passports, because by that time it was December 24th, and nowhere was the consulate to get one was not around, so I managed to get them home. Trying to think that sort of thing, and we get calls of people getting stuck at borders and having to, particularly coming into the UK. And having to issue them work. People say the wrong thing at the border, and then we have to issue them a work permit, and then they get in. But we do that, and that happens not a lot, but not infrequently.
Right.
And I'm trying to think what other kind of disaster. There's been many situations where people get stuck, and we've had to do things at the last minute. I mean, we had. And one of the things is circumventing process. So because every visa application has a time that it's supposed to take to process.
Yeah.
And often there's not enough time, and it's getting all the relevant bodies to work around it and do you a favor. We had again, I suppose I'm allowed to name it. It was Simple Minds, about famous fantastic again. They were being given. It was short notice. They were being given a big award in the US to go and play a show, and we had 3 days. They had no US visas, and the US visas is a 2-stage process. We have to get the thing approved in America and then get a visa, and we managed to put the thing in America, and it normally takes 2 weeks to get the thing done, and then a week to get the visa. And they did it. We put it in and said it. Just did it for the one show, so it was an easy thing to approve. And they put it through, and they came back. We expedited it and came back, and then went to put them into the embassy and sent them to the embassy with saying please, please, please. And because they go to the embassy and were very charming, and the people at the embassy were Simple Minds fans, so they did it the same day for them. So that was like. And there's a lot of that. A lot of, I think, of getting things done is using the names of people, because a lot of people that work in the immigration at the borders and stuff, and then in embassies, they're music fans. And whilst they have this, they're working for governments, obviously they can't do anything wrong. Sometimes, being a fan, will go,
It's nice.
dropping the name, and it can go along, and the artist being charming can go a long way to getting things, because they're just saying, normal people like the rest of us, but they're just as impressed as I am with if you're meeting someone that's famous.
Oh, that's lovely. You've always done a lot of work as well, Andy, around equality, diversity, and inclusion in the music industry. You've always been fighting out for different, causes, and to help things to become more diverse and equal, I guess. Viva La Visa is a lot of women as well. You've always done stuff to support underrepresented groups. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, we try to. I mean, the music industry, when I started in the music industry, one of the big things that we did was Rock Against Racism, and we were very involved in that, and we were on the Rock Against Racism tour, and we've always tried to. And the music industry is still, not as diverse. There's still a lot of white blokes in the industry, and we have always tried. We've always supported, causes and try to work with them. Most of the Viva La Visa team is women.
Fantastic.
Our workforce here, and we've always tried to, and then on our production company, we try to make that as diverse as possible. And obviously we've worked with a wide variety of, of backgrounds of clients, and we try particularly, and we know that, I'm afraid it seems that the dice is loaded against people, immigration wise. So the US and Europe and the UK do seem to be discriminate against people from Africa, from South Asia, and we see it all the time. And we know that we will go, if we have applicants, say we have Nigerian, quite a lot of Nigerian music at the moment coming to the UK, some great stuff. And we know that if we have a Nigerian band applying, or a Nigerian musician, if it comes to the UK, we know that we will have to go the extra, we will have to provide extra documentation over and above what we would normally do. We say, because we think that they will be discriminated against.
Right.
But we know that the battle's not is far from being won. But I think it, is it better? I think it probably is, but I still think there's quite a lot of tokenism still.
Yeah. Yes.
You find that you're at the front line. It's what you do all the time.
Yeah.
And that bigger corporations in particular will kind of mouth things. I mean, we do. One of the things that the production company does, which we're here talking about Viva La Visa today, is there's a feminist literary festival called Prima Donna, which is in Suffolk, which is started by my partner Jane and some other women, and we provide all the production for that, and would have done right from the inception. So. Yeah, I know that we're trying what we can always do better. And and the other thing, I suppose, is one of the things that we, in terms of inclusivity, Viva La Visa, we support a charity a charitable project in Gulu in Uganda, which is a charity for it was a friend of mine has worked on it for some time. It's for disabled people and it's a disabled charity, and because disabled people there in the community are disenfranchised from the community because they're not useful. There's a tendency for that, so they're not useful. And this charity was set up to find, give people work. It was craft outlets and others. And a year ago, we set up a music studio there, and so the musicians are, are all disabled musicians and who have been being taught and record, and then it's an ongoing thing that has outreach, and the teachers teach. It's an ongoing process. So we've been supporting that, and it's going really, it's fantastic.
I love to hear that. Oh, well done, Andy. That's lovely. It's giving you an opportunity as well, isn't it?
Sorry?
It's giving people an opportunity to actually do
it has, and it's great, and there's an enormous amount of creativity, and it means that not only it's a self-perpetuate thing, and it's a great charity because the funds that come from us, you can say, it goes to that piece of equipment, and that piece of soundproofing with the studio and that microphone, and it's direct thing. And we've got the music up on YouTube now, and it's a really brilliant project, and it gives people, apart from producing some really cool music, and the music is a bit of a fusion of local pop and traditional instruments and electronics, and it's some really good stuff, and giving people a purpose in people back into integrated in society. But it's a whole thing. But it's run. We're not being. It's run by them, if you know what I mean. It's got to be run by the community, not patronizing people say, doing that kind of rubbish. It's got to be, and it is. It's role. It's going well. So
well done.
Very pleased, proud of that. Yeah.
And what kind of tips and advice would you give for someone an artist maybe who's thinking about touring, they want to apply for a visa? What kind of tips and hints could you give to them, Andy?
Okay, as I said before, it's the main thing is leave enough time. Enough time. Never underestimate how long it takes to get these things, and plan it out. So especially if you're doing a world tour, plan out where you're going to be, and then do some research. You can talk to us, or the other companies are available, and get an idea. Then at the moment if we're doing a big tour, we're doing one at the moment, and because they're going to multiple destinations, we have to really plan out. Say, well, their passports are going to be at South Korea for that. They're going to be there for 5 days. Then they're going to need to be at Japan for those days, but they're on tour now, and they're going to be in America, and that kind of logistical juggling.
Yeah.
Plan it out. That's the thing, and allow some costs for it. Put it in your budget. Put it in your budget line, in the way that you put everything else in your budget line. It's just, you're going to have to, unfortunately, a lot of it you can do yourself, and of course, we're happy to advise, and we do a lot of pro bono advice for up and coming bands. We have a scheme through the Musicians Union and the ISM, the two music unions, that you can call us up if you're a member and get advice. But it's the number one thing is planning and allowing enough time. I can't impress on that. And I know stuff comes up at the last minute. Of course it does, but
yeah. Thank you, Andy. And if anyone wants to connect with you, find out more about the work you're doing for your charity and also for Viva La Visa, how can they do that?
They can do it. They can look on our website, vivalavisa.co.uk, and phone or call us. We're always happy to take old-fashioned phone calls. Do you want to give the phone number out there? No.
Yeah, I'll put that in the description anyway below.
In the description, yeah, you can get or email us. You can email me, Andy at Viva La Visa, or hello at Viva La Visa. We've got social media. We've got Facebook, the normal, Instagram, TikTok. We've got the normal stuff. But drop us a line, say hello, anything you want to know, and
always so kind.
Happy to talk to you.
Yeah, you're lovely. And Andy, we've got another 5 minutes left. Is there any major wins or successes you'd like to share with us before you go?
Wins. I'd like what would I like a win to be? I'd like the current Dua Lipa tour to all come together and work wonderfully, which is one of the things we're working on at the moment. I'd like the political win, obviously, is to get some kind of. Europe is a problem for everybody, because Europe's, and I think the problem with Europe since Brexit is, for most bands going to most places in Europe, they don't need anything. They can just go do it, and it's fine. But that's not the perception. The perception is we get lots of calls through our MU and ISM lines of people saying, "Oh, I don't know what to do. I haven't been. And these are often, it's solo musicians. It's a nose flute player from who doesn't have a tour manager, and she doesn't have a
manager.
And then is easily put off and think, reading horror stories, it's going to be too difficult. So I think to get more education about Europe, in fact, that it is easy, and also at the same time, we're saying it's easy. It's not so easy for especially for tech people, because a lot of the best tech people in the world are from the UK. There are a lot of good ones here, and they tend to go from one tour to another. So they run out of time that they're allowed to spend in the EU without needing a visa. And it's very difficult to get visas. It's the restrictions. If you think about, every country's got its own bureaucracy, and they're all complicated, and all the others aren't written in English to start off with, which kind of is a bit, puts us at a disadvantage. But I know there's a lot of negotiating at the moment with the Labour government, is trying, is taking the whole thing a lot more seriously than the Tory government did, and is trying. And there's quite a lot of trying and get something arranged so it streamlines and makes it easier for people to from the UK to go and tour in Europe, and the same and vice versa.
Yeah. So
I think that would be the win. That if that comes through, that would be a really big win, just to make it. But there was a whole scheme that was done in 2014, which the UK wasn't part of, which was an artist visa for the whole of the European area, but it kind of got shelved, so that didn't happen. But that would be it. And the cliches say, I'd like to see the production, the music and production industry become more inclusive and fair, and there be fairer shares around for all the songwriters and creators of music in all over the world. that sounds a bit droopy, but you know what I mean.
You know
Yeah,
how-
but
yeah,
I think I'd like to see it, you know, a fairer system for everybody and more inclusive, and to see that you know, for young people coming through, that there are, no matter what background or anything that you may be, there are opportunities there, and there's, you know, if you want to, and don't be put off by thinking that you can't work. You know, I would never dreamt that I would ever work in the music industry from where I come from. It wouldn't have crossed my mind. But you've got to think, you know, dream it. You know, dream it. It can happen. Basically.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, thank you so much, Andy. It's been such a pleasure. It's been great chatting to you. Very good story, and Viva La Visa as well. Thank you again.
Thanks a lot. Bye bye.
See you later. Bye.